welcome to my escape. Today we're going to be doing my monthly wrap-up, which will be all the books I read in May, and I love these videos. These are, I won't say by far, but these are definitely one of my favorite videos to make. One, just because I can look forward to them every month, and two, because it makes me reflect on everything I've read that month, and oftentimes some books just, they don't stick in my memory. So this is kind of a fun way to go back and see kind of what did I really do. And so I think I have 10 on the list for you for May, and they'll all be separated down below by genre, so if you're only interested in one genre, you can jump to that, or you can watch the whole thing through, but let's hop right into it. So a couple weeks ago, I did this giant book haul where I went to this garage sale and I found all of these incredible books, and one of those books was Rhapsodic. So this ended up being the first book I read from the book haul. Did I love it as much as I thought I would? No. So I only gave this about a 3.5 stars. So Rhapsodic jumps in with Callie in present day, and she has all of these beads up her arm. And we find out that each bead is a favor that she owes to a character called the Bargainer. And the Bargainer is this dark something that you find out. But he's a morally gray. You get it. You see where I'm going with that. And he offers people bargains in exchange for favors in the future. But she has like something like 320 beads or something up her arm, and nobody ever gets past like one or two before he calls in his favors. So to her, he just never called in her favor, and she kept asking for more and more of these bargains. Until one day, he comes knocking. That's where the story kind of takes off from there. So he has his own issues that he kind of has to deal with, and there's murders going on, and he needs the help of a siren to figure out what's going on with these murders. So you're kind of following that. He's calling in his chips and his IOUs from Callie. Callie's helping with this murder, but then also the story's jumping back to when they first met, how she collected all of these things, how, you know, they kind of fell apart, stuff like that. So it is interesting in that sense. I actually did like the time jump back and forth. Sometimes I can find it a bit irritating, but on this one I cared about both timelines a lot. And I really did like Callie and the general idea of it. I just thought the execution was a bit weird, and I could not care less about Des, the love interest, the main guy. I found him so annoying, so blah, so plain, so nothing special. I was like, there is literally nothing to your character. It's like you're a cardboard cutout that just is stuck there. And I found him irritating, and I just didn't care about him. So that was a big drawback for me, because this is a fantasy romance, so you would think you would want to enjoy the romance, but I literally did not care. And I was kind of hoping there'd be like a little switcheroo of love interests maybe at the end, but that didn't happen. So maybe in the rest of the series, but I really could not care less about Des, and I would like him gone. Also, the world building was a bit lax. I would have liked to have seen more in terms of that. The book isn't that big, so I do understand that maybe as the series progresses that we'll get more into it, and that's why I might say it's like more of a 4, because I did enjoy reading it. I was really into it and wanted to get through it, but I think that's coming more from my own interest in it rather than the story bringing me along. And then the second fantasy romance I read this month was Bow Before the Elf Queen. So the prologue is kind of, this fairy child has been born, and you get tested in front of the court for magic. She's tested, she has magic. She's immediately betrothed to the prince because magic is very rare. And then her mom senses that something's off and something's wrong. She doesn't trust the king, so she squirrels the daughter away, gives her daughter to a friend to raise, and this baby girl is raised in the human world. Then the actual book picks up 25 or 27 years later, something like that. She does know about her past and know about where she came from and why she's in hiding and all that, and then she gets found out. So the book really primarily takes place in the Fae world. She's brought there by, her betrothed, and he's like, we gotta get married, and you can't avoid this because there's a secret magic clause in there that means we can't get out of it. So it's kind of like that arranged marriage, forced marriage, enemies to lovers kind of thing. I don't know if I'd really call it enemies to lovers because it's very one-sided in that sense. But she's also not weak, so she has her own skills. Definitely, she's been training to fight. She's been preparing this her whole life. It wasn't something she figured would never happen. She always thought she'd have to face her past, and she was ready for it. I really liked the connection to the characters. I didn't necessarily care if they were together or not, but I liked how they interacted with everyone around them. I liked the politicking of the world. I liked the descriptions and the other kingdoms. And then there was this little gnome thing in the story who I absolutely loved. I just had so much fun with this book. I gave it 4 stars, and definitely will be hopping into the second one. So those were my fantasy romance, and then I read 2 dark romance this month, and the first one was Stolen Touches. This is the continuation of a standalone series which I touched before, back into like my mafia era. I didn't really love this one. I gave it 3 stars, but honestly, the more I think about it, the more I would knock it down to like a 2. It's one of those ones that I like forget I even read because it really wasn't that great. It did give me like the mafia vibes, which is what I was looking for, which is why I gave it a 3. But essentially, the story follows Milene, something like that. I'm gonna call her Millie. Millie and Salvatore, and Millie is the sister of another mafia don in another city, and she moves to New York without telling this other mafia family that she's going to live there, and that's like a big deal, and she does her nursing residency there. And then the mafia don of New York finds out she's there, finds out the connection, and he's like, you know what, I'm obsessed with you, I'm going to make you marry me. And that's the entirety of the story. And that happens in the first like chapter, so that was not spoilers, but like you can see where the story goes kind of from there. It was just too much for me. The possessiveness, just it was so overkill and so overbearing, and like I couldn't deal with it. There was also no talks about like, hey, how are we gonna like adjust or deal with this, or how are you gonna fix your own problems kind of thing. Instead of pushing them all onto me, the main character was just kind of like, okay, if that makes you feel better, sure, we'll do that. And I was like, his requests are ridiculous though, and not sustainable, and just no. So that it just was very like, I don't want to say unrealistic because kind of the whole genre is unrealistic, but I'm gonna say unrealistic, okay? I couldn't do it. I did like it because it gave me the mafia vibes, and I loved the epilogue, okay? I hate epilogues on the most part. I find them annoying, tedious, unnecessary. I'm here for the tension and the drama, and there's never tension or drama in the epilogue. That's the whole point. I don't need to see people happy, okay? I'm here for the drama. But anyways, so I actually loved the epilogue in this book, which is definitely saying something. I thought it was so cute, so like, oh, definitely that like red flag, but that like fun red flag that you're looking for when you pick up a dark romance, rather than just like an irritating red flag, you know? So that was really cute. But yeah, on further reflection, I would probably knock it down to like a 2-star. I'm not going to continue with the series because neither one of the 2 books I've read from it has really blown me away. And there's other mafia out there I could read. So I think that's a wrap on that series for me. And then the second mafia romance I read was Sinners Anonymous. And Sinners Anonymous I also gave 3 stars, but where the Stolen Touches I probably would bump down. Sinners Anonymous is definitely on the higher end of 3 stars. It's not a 4-star though because I just didn't really connect with it like I wanted to. This is a kind of a standalone series. The first book follows Rory and Angelo, and the second 2 books follow Rafe and Penny. I have read the second 2 books a couple times. I love them. It's my favorite mafia romance little couple. So this was me going back and reading the beginning of the series. So I had high expectations for it. High expectations. Just know that kind of going in when I said I gave it 3 stars. So this one, as I said, follows Rory and Angelo, and Rory is engaged to Angelo's uncle, who's like a 70-year-old man, and Rory's like 20-something. So it's a big age gap. It's a big age gap, and Rory doesn't want to be there. She doesn't want to be engaged to this man. He's very like disgusting and disturbing, but she's doing it for her own kind of like motives that you find out, and she's kind of been like pushed into this and can't really get out of it. And Angelo comes along, and the more he interacts with his uncle's family, and the more he interacts with Rory, the more kind of invested and curious he gets about her. And then they have a couple run-ins, and it gets steamy, and it gets spicy, and the sparks are flying. There were parts of this book I really did like I loved Rory. I love Rory's character. I love how petty she is, and I love how Angelo's like, we'll deal with it. We got this. The penance thing, I mean, maybe not my cup of tea, but it was very like, okay, these people do work well together kind of thing. And there were some scenes that were just like, they were ballsy. Like the ocean scene. Rory. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with that. But in terms of like the book as a whole, I didn't feel like I had enough of a connection between Rory and Angelo. Like I said, I read the second and third books first, and they kind of appear in those. So I already had a basis and a foundation for them as a couple and them together. And I think that really helped me in this one. Whereas I feel like if I went into this one first, they didn't lay enough of a foundation for me to be like, oh, these characters are truly meant to be together. Really do complement and strengthen one another. I didn't really get that. The aspects of them being, it's like all the variables in the equation were given in the book, but the author never put the equation together kind of thing. So like I could infer that like this part of her would possibly complement him, but there was no scenes where you saw kind of their personality and their characteristics really like deeply align outside of like the bedroom, but like personality wise wasn't to the level that I would have wanted it to be. I also again did have very high expectations going into this one, so that probably dropped it down a little bit too. So definitely would recommend that series, although this one wasn't my favorite in it. So talking about rereads, that brings me into my next kind of subgenre, still romance, but this is more like contemporary romance. So I reread Book Lovers. Yes, I only read this last month, but I reread it because the audio was like on the hotspot on my library, so you could get it without it counting against your borrows for the month, and it was there, and I was like, I love this book. So I listened to it on audio while I got a bunch of like unpacking and chores done and all that fun stuff, and it was just as good as the first time around. I truly love this book. It is so freaking cute. So this book follows Nora and Charlie, and they're both kind of in the book world. They live in New York. Nora's a book agent, Charlie's a book editor. They've crossed in the path over one author and one work, and it was kind of like they butted heads a little bit. And then the story picks up a couple years later when Nora and her sister take a vacation to a small town, and guess who happens to be there? Charlie. This book just turns all romance cliches and romance tropes on its head. So Nora, instead of being like the small town girl and meeting the big city boy, Nora's the girl that would get dumped for that small town girl. So she's very conscious of this. She brings it up all the time, and I just freaking love this book. It's funny in the way it turns like tropes on their heads, but also like you're deeply attached to both Nora and Charlie. You just want the world for them. You want them best. You want them together because they're perfect. And it's so cute. It's so cute, and it's just as good the second time around. The second contemporary romance I read was Make Me by Tessa Bailey. This was again just on one of those hotspots on my library. So I read Tessa Bailey's It Happened One Summer, and I really do like that book. But I hadn't read any really, well, I read Hook, Line, and Sinker, the second in the series, and I didn't like that one. But I hadn't really read any other books by her. So I was like, oh, this is easy, this is available. So I tried it out. I didn't love it, to be honest. I gave it 3 stars. It was kind of just, it was a contemporary romance. It's kind of forgettable. I always forget that I read it. It wasn't awful while reading it though. It just wasn't memorable. So this follows Russell and Abby, and it's kind of like a friends to lovers. They've only been friends for about a year. And Russell has had a thing for Abby the whole time, but he doesn't think he's good enough because of his past and kind of his economic bracket and stuff like that. And Abby comes from a very rich family, but she's very, very sheltered. And then one day she looks at Russell and she sees him in a new light, and she's like, you kind of cute. And then it kind of like, things kind of spiral from there. So there's a lot of like internal like, he doesn't like me, or I'm not good enough for her. Very wishy-washy, very much like you just kind of wish they would communicate half the time and actually just be like open and honest about things. But it is what it is. They both have their histories and, you know, the baggage that they're bringing into relationships. So it did feel real in that sense, where they both came like as developed people with both good and bad traits. And not everything is perfect, and not everything is exactly how the reader would want it to be, because, you know, people are real and they don't always want to talk about the things that like hurt them in the past or stuff like that. So I do get that. I just didn't really care that much. I wasn't that invested in the relationship. I wasn't that invested in either character. It had its cute moments, so it wasn't like it was a drag to read, but it wouldn't be something that I would like pick up again. I certainly wouldn't pick it up again. Probably wouldn't recommend it to people. It's just kind of like, well, it's in the middle. It's 3 stars. It is what it is. Third contemporary romance I read was definitely more on the erotica side of romance, but it is part of the Fiona Cole's Voyeur series. So I've read a couple like Liar, Lover. I'm like 90% through Voyeur. I really loved Liar. I did not love Lovers, and Voyeur is kind of like blah for me. So I'm really like wishy-washy on the series. But I figured I'd keep going, so I picked up the next one, and it is called Another. So it is book 5. They are standalones. You don't have to read them in any order. I'm jumping through like, you know, really weird order. But Another takes Karina from Lovers, one of the people in that relationship, and she'd been spurned in that book. So this follows like her story after that. I really didn't like her in Lovers. I didn't like any of the characters in Lovers. However, in this book, she got way better, and I was actually invested, and this book actually made me really happy, and I gave it 4 stars out of nowhere, because you know what this book is? It's a surprise pregnancy. I did not think I would like a surprise pregnancy, and had it not been this series, I probably never would have picked one up. It's not a trope I seek out, but it was actually the cutest thing, and now maybe I'm like, maybe I do like this trope. I don't know, but I'm going to try more of it because this actually warmed my whole heart. The night she found out that her marriage or her engagement was falling apart, she met this guy at the bar and he offered to take her home. And she's like, you know what? I don't think I'm mentally in a space for that. He respected that. They parted ways. The second time they met was on a the weirdest blind date ever, but it was like a blind date where you do a lingerie shoot with some stranger and like her friend or something organized it for her, which is a bit odd, but like, okay. And then he happened to be, you know, the partner for that blind date. So they hit things off really well, had a little spicy times, and then parted ways. No names, no numbers. And she gets pregnant from that. So the third time they meet, she's 8 months pregnant. He has no idea. He puts two and two together, and then it's kind of like them building from there. Like, what are they going to do? How are they going to handle this? Etc., etc. So he's all in. He wants to try the family thing. He's ready to be a father, and he wants to take things further with Karina. And Karina is kind of pumping the brakes, and she's saying, whoa, whoa, like I've been burned before. I have all these trust issues now. You were a playboy. I don't know you, and you know it's just like I've prepared for 8 months for it just to be the baby and me kind of thing. So she's really hesitant, and she doesn't know whether she can trust him. And he's trying to like earn that trust and earn that respect. It was actually super cute, and I was rooting for their little family to pull through and to make it, and I was like, yes, come on guys, you can do it, you can do it. Their communication was done really well actually, and I don't know, it just hit hard. Well, the last 20% of the book was unnecessary and kind of annoying, but like, you knew it was coming. But the rest of the book, I was like, you guys are so cute, you guys are so cute, so loved it. The last contemporary romance I read this month was The Highest Bidder by Sarah Kate. It's the 5th in the Salacious Players Club. I have really been liking the Salacious Players Club. However, I did not like this book. I did not like this book at all. So this book follows Ronan and Daisy, and Ronan is like in his late 50s, and Daisy's in her early 20s. So I think it's like a 38-year age gap or like a 35-year age gap, something like that. That is a large age gap. That is a large age gap. If you don't know the Salacious Player series, it is all based around this sex club. So that's where they meet. She's working as a waitress, and he is a client member of this sex club, and she gets auctioned off one night, and he buys kind of the night with her, and then things kind of go from there. I don't know if there's a single thing I liked about this book at all, okay? Like at all. I feel like I could have gotten over the age gap, maybe, but not because, and I don't think this is a spoiler because it happens like 3 chapters in, but you find out that Daisy is working at the sex club because she stalked Ronan there because Ronan left her mom / her money, and she wants to know if her mom was secretly banging this guy. And then guess what? She starts secretly banging the guy that she thinks her mom secretly banged. And I'm not down for that. I'm not down for that at all. I was like, excuse me? What? And then she starts like rationalizing it to herself because her mom has passed away, which is how she like found out all this stuff. But like her mom has passed away, and then she's like, I feel so close to her because I love the same man she loved. And I was like, ooh. I'm sorry. What? No, it wasn't for me. I really couldn't get over that part. And yeah, no. I found Daisy annoying. I found Ronan, although I did find that he was like a real character and like a real person with like insecurities and strengths and weaknesses and such. I also just didn't care about him like at all. And their relationship just made like no sense whatsoever. The daddy kink is also in this one, and that's just a no for me. It's not like a hard no, like I'll hate the book, but when I'm already disliking the book and then that's added on top, it definitely is a snowball effect. So yeah, I know lots of people love this one. I know the Salacious Players Club is a very hot series right now, but this one was not for me. So I actually gave that a 1 star. So I read actually a suspense book this month, and that was my first suspense book, so definitely keep that in mind as I go through this review because I did not like it, but so many people that actually read suspense and that's their genre, they're loving this book. So keep it in mind, this is the first suspense I've ever read. So it was The Housemaid, and it follows Millie, kind of. So you start out on Millie, and she's an ex-con living in her car looking for a job, and she stumbles across this live-in housekeeper job for this very rich family, and she's like, oh my god, this is great. The only catch is that she's in this really creepy like attic room. She's like, well, that's a bit weird that the lock's on the outside of the door, but sure, I'll take it. And I was like, what? Ma'am, day 1, I'd be changing the handle out. Day 1, no. But anyways, starts working for this family, and the mom is like super hot and cold, so she'll just like gaslight her or lie or like not tell her things and like freak out over tiny things, but then be like, oh my god, you're so great, I'm so happy you're here, etc., etc. So she's very hot and cold, and I don't know if that was to make us like suspicious, but it just made me irritated, and I was like, I don't care. But yeah, so while this is going on, Millie is slowly finding the husband more and more attractive. Not her husband, like her boss's husband. And I'm like, man, just felt very choppy to me, very weird, and very, very boring for like Millie's whole part. So I think this book is like part 1, part 2, part 3. So once you get to part 2, again, this is a suspense, so I can't really say anything about part 2 other than it did pick up its pace and it did get a bit more interesting. However, I still didn't overly care because I was so bored by part 1. I was like, okay, I would just like to finish this book at this point. Not my usual genre. I gave this one 2 stars because I really didn't I don't think appreciate it, but if you're a suspense reader, just know like it's all over the book platforms. People are giving this 5 stars. People are loving this. So it could just be a me thing and not understanding like the flow of the genre. So this is a YA fantasy dystopian sci-fi trilogy thing. Where to start? So this follows Nova and Adrian, and the world is like living in a comic book. It's like reading a comic book. They're all like superheroes and villains. It was the niece of kind of like the main villain. So basically the world existed as it had, and then the villains kind of came in and they were like, no, we're not going to stand for this, because basically like superpowered children are being like oppressed and killed and stuff. So then they went into the Age of Anarchy. The renegades are actually the superheroes. So the superheroes came in, I think, 10 years into the Age of Anarchy, and they were like, no, we need to like reestablish society. So they took the villains down, and the renegades set up a council and this whole like renegade process where they recruit and train and organize superheroes and kind of like rebuild society. So then I think they've been rebuilding society for a couple years, and that's kind of like where we pick up. So we follow 2 young characters. This guy, the Sentinel, and Nova, and they're kind of 2 sides of the same war. So the Sentinel, Adrian, the son of 2 of the biggest superheroes in the city, and he's very much like into the renegades and like protecting people and what it is to be a superhero, and he's very like deeply entrenched in that side of things. And then Nova, or Nightmare, is a villain. She was raised with villains during this like age of oppression for them while the renegades took over, and she decides that in order for kind of anarchy to win again and for like the villain time to come out again, she has to take the renegades down from the inside. She'll infiltrate the organization, and she's put on Adrian's team. So now they're kind of working together while she's trying to undermine them but also understand their side, and they have these great debates, and I just freaking love it. All the perfect vibes. So like the names are really cheesy. Like there's Ace Anarchy, and he's the worst villain. And then there's Captain Chromium, and he's like the best superhero and stuff like that. So initially I was reading the names and I was like, this might be a little bit too childish for me, but no, I absolutely loved it. It was the perfect mix of like that like cheesy comic book era names and powers and stuff like that, but it also like backed everything up with social commentary on who actually gets to dictate like what good is, what is the government's role in society, how much should they be involved. So without getting like too political, it definitely was a critique and like question of society, but both sides are argued so well. I don't know which side is winning me over more. So good, just so good, so fun. Everything about it was flawless. So the settings, the carnival, hit me with a deserted carnival any day, because those are just incredible settings every single time, and they did it so well. And like the description of like walking through the funhouse was perfectly balanced, and everything about this book I absolutely love. Would recommend this to everyone, would recommend this to anyone. I don't care what genre you read, you're probably gonna love it. I mean, that's probably not true, but to me, everyone would love this book. It is perfect. I'm so excited to get into the next 2. It's great. And the other thing you'll see a lot is this book, A Day of Fallen Night. I have started this one. I'm about 70 pages in, and I'm doing this one for book club. So we're supposed to read about 100 pages a week. I'm already behind. I'm not great with book clubs, okay? But it's a hefty boy. There's always going to be like a couple 100 pages dedicated to it every month. But we will get through this summer with my book club, and it's going to be great. that's all I got for you guys for this video. I hope to see you guys on the next one. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I post videos every Friday and sometimes on a Tuesday when I'm feeling it. So ring that bell for notifications so you don't miss anything, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye!